You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong.
Welcome to episode 155 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me, as always, is my podcast partner in crime, journalist, blogger, published writer, and dog translator, Jessica Szilagyi.
Dog translator?
Well, you had to help Stanley Eugene with the book.
Well, sort of. But I feel like that cancels out the use of blogger because, that's like code these days for idiot.
Is it?
Well, people like to use it as if it's like derogatory. I don't think it is. I mean, anything online is new media and it's not old media. And people try to say that, oh, you're just a blogger or, she's some blogger. It's always what they say when they're trying to discredit my work. But I don't really care what you call it. Just read it because you stay on the page for, 30 seconds to a minute. There's analytics, baby.
Well, and I forgot to mention, owner of the Georgia Virtue.
Yes. It's funny that you bring that up because, I've kind of forgotten. I've been working on it all week, but I kind of forgot. And I was thinking about this opinion piece that I wanted to write, and I was going to put it on one of my older blogs and share it. And then I was like, you know what? I can put it on the Georgia Virtue because I can put whatever the heck I want on there because I own it. So
that you can.
Yes.
Well, it is a double-edged sword owning your own business, but that's one of the advantages is you decide, well, for you, your own content. And I don't have to worry about being fired for someone going through my social media going, I don't like what you had to say. Worst thing you can do is not hire me. Like, okay, well, go pay more somebody else. Fine with me.
That's right.
I'll do fine.
Right.
So we have the weekly dose of Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Did she make your week great again?
Oh, yeah. The House voted largely along party lines, 230 to 199 on Thursday to strip Greene for membership on the House Education and Labor Committee and the Budget Committee.
That sucks for her district.
Does it, though? It does it, other than it's embarrassing.
I think it's pretty dang embarrassing.
It is, but it's no more embarrassing than the stuff that she says. The QAnon stuff. The having a militia act as security for one of her events. Back, I think it was in November. All sorts of other stuff that Margie has done. It is embarrassing. And I've said 100 times on the show, I've met her. She's perfectly reasonable in person. It's just she's got this diarrhea of the keyboard when she gets on Twitter.
She has Donald Trump's problem.
She does, without his personality.
Right, and yeah.
But she does have fans. She does have people who just are rabid fans, just like Donald Trump has. She's got... Hell, Matt is doing a 30-day Facebook vacation because he said that she should be recalled, and one of her fans, who is a preacher, calls himself a preacher, threatened to fight him over it. Wanted to meet in a church parking lot and fight him.
Oh, Lord. Literally.
Yeah, literally fine. And then after the thread got shut down on one of the government sites, they took to a private message. You know where I am. You've got my address. Come and get some. I'm like, and I've seen this dude. And like, this dude should not be threatening to fight anybody.
Has anyone ever challenged you to a duel on social media?
No. Me
either.
I have had people say, you wouldn't say that to my face. I'm like, we obviously haven't met. Because if you think I'm a smartass online, you ought to see me in person. But I also do things with a little more charm than low.
Yeah. Matt's pretty direct.
Yeah, I like to use humor to illustrate a point, and Matt's like, "You're stupid." That's stupid. So if you're hoping to hear from Lo on Facebook over the next 30 days, I guess you won't.
Wow.
But yeah, but that's the fan side of it.
It's the media outlets, particularly in outside of your district, like your congressional district, keep reporting like, around the country, Marjorie's an embarrassment, but in her district, she's a hero, and this, that, and the other. Or they'll talk about how divided it is. Like, people either love her or hate her. And I'm like, you do realize it's like that with most people, right? Like, there's not a whole lot of elected officials people are indifferent about. Like, nobody's indifferent about Nancy Pelosi. No one's like, I could take her or leave her.
But here's the thing. Do you know who the representative of the 5th district in Oregon is?
No.
Right, because you're not supposed to. Everybody in America knows who ours is.
She did it, though. She's played right into their hands. I mean, she's like a fiddle.
And she's been there 5 damn minutes. 5 minutes. I doubt she's even moved into her apartment yet. You've been there 5 minutes. And you've already isolated yourself from most of the Republicans. And look, I get it. I get that there are a lot of rhinos, and I get there are a lot of Republicans who are team people and all that. But if you really want to do anything for the people of your district, if you want to affect any change in government, if you want to try to push the freedom that you talked about on the campaign trail, isolating yourself from everyone is not the way to do it. Even Rand Paul, who is somewhat an outsider amongst Republicans, works with them on the things that he sees are important, and he votes against the Republicans when he thinks that's important also. And look, Marjorie is really good on guns. She has great opinions on the Second Amendment. She has really reasonable opinions on the use of marijuana, which is it's not a federal issue, and the federal government should reschedule and allow the states to decide whether or not they want to allow the use in their state. That's a very enlightened view for a Republican. It shouldn't be an enlightened view for a Republican, because that's the way most things should be. Is it's not a federal issue. You guys deal with it in the states.
Right.
It shouldn't be as rare as it is, but
Here we are.
Here we are. So if she would talk about personal freedom, personal responsibility, talk about the things that speak to people's hearts. And I think this is about libertarians too, is get off of the crazy train and start talking about basic things that we all value, which is personal freedom, personal responsibility, getting government out of your life. And when you speak like that, and you speak, I guess I'm giving the average person too much credit, aren't I?
You are, but it's the same. I mean, it's the case with any elected official. If you're not changing any hearts or minds, you're not. I mean, you could. Okay, let me back up. I think there are two ways that you can be effective in Congress, and I mean, if I use effective lightly because I don't really want them to, or I use it loosely because I don't really want them to do too much. But you can either, push initiatives and get them passed, or you can be vocal and draw attention to issues. And I think Rand Paul and Mike Lee, sometimes, Thomas Massey, they do a great job of winning hearts and minds and opening people's minds. Like, people from across the aisle or different corners of the perspective aisle, at some point or another, come to them or flock to them on different issues because they try to be influential and explain to people why X, Y, and Z is the better option. Marjorie is not doing that. A lot of them don't do that. And she's not going to be effective either in passing any measure ever. Yeah.
And in fact, her signature on any measure will be a killer.
That's right.
When you become so polarizing, and I'm talking about your personality polarizing, not her views. Her views on, like I said, the personal liberty are great. She just can't get her online persona out of the damn way.
Well, we've talked about it on the show too, though. She has not always been honest, so that works against her too.
Sure. And look, she's called AOC of the right, and she wants to wear that as a badge of honor, and it's not. Cortez is not overly cerebral. I mean, she's a caricature of the ditzy liberal. That's going around and yelling swamp and pointing your finger and yelling communist. It may get you elected in the 14th, but that's not a way to govern. There's not a way to get anything done, especially when you start, if you want to get things like gun laws passed. And when I say gun laws, repealing firearms laws. Look, she could sign on to the Hearing Protection Act, which removes silencers from the National Firearms Act, which silencer is just a gun muffler. It just muffles the sound. Anywhere else in the world is considered polite to put a silencer on your gun because people don't have to hear it go bang. If she were to sign on to that bill, no Republican would touch it right now. So she is ineffective at this point, and she will run for re-election, and she'll probably win.
You think?
Yeah, and here's the other thing, is some of her fanboys said, well, she won election by 70%. And my response to that was, she lost 30% to no one. She didn't have an opponent. Her opponent pulled out. There were literally 30% of people who voted for no one.
Yeah.
Hell, Connie wrote my name in. Neither one of us voted for her. I think I just left it blank. I think she wrote my name in.
Yeah.
Just as a protest vote. So it would show up when the numbers as, 1% is just as other.
Yeah.
But anyway, we spent too much time on somebody who is not going to have any real effect in Washington. Jeffrey Epstein Victims Fund is about to run dry.
Did you know there was a Jeffrey Epstein Victims Fund?
It never occurred to me.
I didn't know it either. And it, I loved the media articles because it was like, this fund was established as a result or following Epstein's hanging or death by hanging in 2019. And like in my head, I'm like, but Epstein didn't kill himself, because that's every time you see an Epstein anything, that's what the narrative is. But apparently the people in charge of his estate liquidated funds as they could to pay people and pay the victims, which, that's their prerogative. I don't have a problem with it, but they said that over 150 people filed claims since last June, and the deadline to apply is March 25th of this year, and they're worried they're going to run out of money. And my question is kind of like, well, why didn't you wait until you knew how many people you had to pay before you started dishing out funds?
That's a good question. Because
the deadline is March 25th, but until February 8th this year, so I guess Tuesday, you can, new people can come forward with new allegations. So why are you, I appreciate the sentiment, but and if you were first, and I guess it's none of our business how much people got, but I would like to, if you're going to talk about it, if you're going to promote that you're doing this as a good cause, well, how do you decide who gets what and how much? And they've already given out $50 million.
How do you vet the claims and all that? Right.
Well, and how do you decide how much, first of all, how do you put a price on that? And then who are you to distinguish? Whatever. It's just, I think it's a little reckless to start giving out money when you are still accepting claims.
Well, I think that this was an effort to stem the lawsuits that will be coming again against the estate. They will be many. So if they can set up a fund and they can go ahead and have people sign and say, this is what I'm accepting. Because look, whatever they get out of the fund, especially if you take 150 people into 50 million, whatever they get will be way more than they'll get in a class action. Because the only people who make money in a class action are the lawyers. That's
right.
So anybody who hops into this fund will go ahead and sign their rights away. I'm accepting this. I'm not going to seek any other damages against the Epstein family or his estate. I'm assuming there's just no way they're not signing some sort of declaration that this is it. This is our only payment. They will do better than a class action suit, and the family will be somewhat protected against future lawsuits. And it shows good faith if they do have to go to court and say, look, we put $50 million aside in good faith to try to make whole these people that were harmed. But you're right. I obviously you can't. I don't care if each one got $50 million. You can't make up for being abused.
No, and I don't think they're trying to by any. I mean, I didn't mean to imply that I don't think they're trying to, but it's just really interesting. If they opened it in June, it's been 8 months ish that they've been well, not even, but whatever. They've been for a while now, and that's a fairly short amount of time to accept a claim. And put a price tag on it and then actually hand out money. I feel like that's fairly quick. So it's just interesting to me.
Well, here's the conspiracy side. What if this is a payoff? Because they're all going to sign an NDA to cover anybody who went to his island. So it's not just people that maybe Epstein abused, but any of the people that rode on the Lolita Express down there.
Well, and that's certainly possible. I mean, I would never rule that out because lawyers. But, I also feel like the ones who were going to or wanted to be upfront and weren't going to take money, like, usually it's rare for people to take an overlap, right? To be the overlapping of the vocal person and the one who wants money. And I'm not saying that wanting money is wrong, but it's rare for someone to want both. There's usually the people who want to draw attention to it and call out the wrong. And then there's the people who just want to be who feel like they're entitled to a claim and want to go away quietly.
Well, it's not just that. It's, look, you can take this money and you can shut your mouth, or you're going to get nothing. And if you think you're going to take this person down, you're not.
Right. No. Yeah.
You're just not. There's not going to be any evidence. There's no video evidence. This happened. It doesn't matter. 6 months, 2 years, 10 years ago. There's going to be no evidence of it. The best thing you can do for your family is go ahead and take this, $300,000. Go put some money in your kid's college fund. Go buy yourself a new house and move on with your life. It's the same thing that Bill Cosby was accused of doing. Is no one will believe you. You're not going to have any evidence. Just be quiet. You take the payoff. So I don't know. And look, I don't have any evidence that's what's happening.
Sure.
And we won't, because this is all private. But that's the first thing that popped in my head when I said, why are they paying these people off so quickly? I think they're protecting the people that went down to his island. Because apparently, as the accusation goes, and I'm not getting into QAnon stuff here, as the accusation goes, these were very powerful, very rich people that Epstein associated himself with.
Yeah.
We have a loser of the week this week.
We do.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Don't you think this is a good reason to be a loser of the week?
Yeah. Not understanding how the world works. Yeah. Look, we'll get into it. He wants to fine companies $100,000 a day for deplatforming politicians.
Yep.
It's an initiative he's pushing according to a press release last week, but the bill has not been drafted. So he's getting everyone riled up without concrete parameters.
Yeah, he's pulling the viewpoint discrimination. This is a First Amendment censorship issue, and we're going to take action. And there's actually a really good piece on Reason about this, and we'll link to it. But the author, Scott Shackford, he just talks about how something like this is clear as mud when it comes down to Supreme Court rulings and I guess the way that federal law would intervene or override what the state is trying to do and when it wouldn't. So I thought it is really interesting, and we'll talk about it a little bit more. But his whole argument is, like, do states have the authority to punish a tech company like this? And we have Democrats in our state that have wanted to do things, and they have not filed bills because they don't believe that the state can regulate the internet like that. So I definitely think it's bold on DeSantis' part, but
bold is a word for it. Look, I get it. What Facebook and Twitter have done and others, they're a-holes. But first of all, even getting out of the argument of the fact that it's not a First Amendment issue, it's just not. It's a private platform. They're not obligated to publish what you say. Without, I mean, and he's supposed to be a Republican, a conservative, a small government person. That means you get government out of stuff. The state doesn't have the authority. Unless Facebook is based in Florida, would be the only way I could think of. How are you going to say, well, if you ever show up in Florida again, you'll be fined $100,000 per day? Because there's no, that I know of, physical presence of Facebook in Florida. It exists in the ether.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the way that people don't want to phrase this, but it's very accurate, is, do you want to force Facebook and Twitter or whatever platform it is of the day or server, or you want to force Amazon to host Parler? Do you want to force Amazon to allow Joe Schmo to use their platform? And the whole Section 230 part about publishers versus platforms and everything. Like, I am the Georgia Virtue. I am the publisher. I can be sued for what I put on there. I cannot be sued for what Dave Roberts comments in the comment section. And that's a good protection. But it's the same concept here of, should I be, if I want to ban you from using my website, or from commenting, I mean, you can still read it, you can still look at it, blah, blah, blah. But if I don't want you to use it, should I be forced to allow you to use it? That's ridiculous. Well,
and the fact that it only covers politicians.
Well, yeah, of course. What about who was it after the election? Was it Neil Bortz who got banned from Twitter for a little while?
Oh, I don't know. Lots of them have.
And I think it came back. I don't know if it was Neil Bortz or someone else, but there were some that were, banned for a couple of days. And I mean, again, Lynn Wood, he's not elected, and I'm not defending him by any means. He's a mess, but he wouldn't fall into this protection. So.
Right. And by the time this gets hashed out, by the time his idea goes in the sausage grinder, it's going to be politicians or it's going to be elected officials, which would be an Incumbent Protection Act. So Facebook and Twitter could shut down someone running for office, but not the elected official.
Right.
So we don't know what it's going to look like, but I don't see how it's enforceable. I don't see how it's constitutional. They simply don't have the authority to impose fines over something that exists in the ether.
Well, but
the company is housed in California.
That's not necessarily true, though, because in the article on Reason, they talk about how there's a number of Supreme Court rulings over the years where the state or the Supreme Court has backed the states or the state mandates that force private entities to serve, whatever it may be, when the state laws conflict with federal statutes, because the argument is that the federal statutes are interfering with the state's effort to protect the free speech rights of its citizens. So, I mean, that's why the narrative is free speech, free speech, free speech, because they're supposedly protecting the rights of the citizens. However, I would argue, if it were me, which nobody ever asks me, but I would argue that, government has no role in protecting my rights. My rights protect me from the government, and they're inherent. And I just you need not touch them. Like, just don't interfere. So it's a whole bunch of overstepping. Basically, everyone's slapping their, on the table to see who's in charge. But per usual, the Supreme Court has been wildly inconsistent. I mean, there's a 1980 decision where they forced a shopping mall to allow protesters on private property because there was political, they've just been inconsistent.
Look, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Congress shall pass no law, or shall make no law. I keep editing.
So do they, so no worries.
Yeah, the same 18th century vernacular. It doesn't, and I understand. If you stand up for the Second Amendment and say that it applies to modern weapons, then you have to say the First Amendment applies to modern speech. It says Congress shall make no law.
But that's wrong too. It just applies. It doesn't apply when.
It doesn't say Congress shall make a law forcing private entities to allow free speech.
Well, this is what happens when you continue to look to, it's just this is why government sucks, because if you continue to look to the courts to make a decision and those people continue to change and they are partisan in nature and you care who is appointed because of their personal views, not their interpretations based on documents and foundations.
And look, no one will like what comes out of Congress if they decide to start regulating speech on Facebook or on Twitter or on Parler or anything else. You're not going to like it. If you think some dweeb sitting in his mom's basement somewhere in California going through and fact-checking your stuff is annoying, wait till it's a government entity. I think DeSantis likes the FaceTime. I assume he's running for re-election in 22.
Yeah, he had he didn't just put out a press release. He had a whole press conference on it. Of course he liked the FaceTime.
Right. So I don't expect it. It may not go anywhere. It doesn't matter. He's making points for re-election. And that's all it's about. Is you find these hot issues that people feel strongly about right now, and you come out with something so you can parade around like a wrestler in the ring after you pin somebody with the arms up. You parade around. Look what I'm doing for you. So yeah, and I don't dislike DeSantis. It just this idea of forcing your views on private entities is repugnant, because that's what conservatives are supposed to be against: government intervention with private business.
Yeah, well,
look, Facebook sucks. What they've been doing sucks. I saw they fact checked a joke. A joke. They put a thing where you have to click to see. And
they did that on my Spike Cohen post.
Yeah.
About him saying that libertarians were going to start getting, since we're domestic terrorists, we'll start getting guns from the CIA in cash.
Right.
And it was a joke he made on Twitter, and Facebook flagged me as being partly false, which the partly part kind of made me laugh too, but whatever.
Yeah, it's a joke. It's like, click and find out why. A horse did not actually walk into a bar. It's a joke. And I don't know, man. I don't know. But like I said, they suck. But it's a platform that we all use. It's a platform that we use to promote this show, because nobody else has their platform. Nobody else has, and look, their stock has been down and all that, but nobody else has their platform. So it's something that we all use. This, of course, is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis.
I like our new disclaimer.
I like the irregular.
Well, I mean, I just want it to be thorough. Like I just want to be thorough.
So you're saying we have no virtue?
All I'm saying is I like the new disclaimer.
Of course you do. You wrote it.
Well, yeah, I thought it was good.
So the hands-free law needs a loophole, or it needs a loophole to close a loophole.
Yeah, here we go. Freaking John Carson again, the godfather of the hands-free shit show. When the law first passed, 3 years ago now, they put the provision in there that said on your first offense, if you go to court, you show up and say, I bought a device that allows me to talk hands-free, your case would be thrown out. You wouldn't get any points. You wouldn't have to pay a fine, blah, blah, blah. Of course, in the subsection, this isn't really talked about very much, but it only applies if you were on holding the phone while driving to be on the phone. If you were texting or if you were using the keyboard, I guess, in that sense, which I never really understood how they could distinguish, whatever. But there's a distinction there. You're not supposed to get it in texting cases. I don't know how they would prove that either, because if an officer said, what were you doing? I would say driving. So I'm not going to answer their questions, and you shouldn't either. But so they want to close the loophole so that on the first time you go to court, you get a fine and you get points, because now there's 99% awareness, according to John Carson, and it's time to save more lives. That's what he said.
I
just can't.
You can't even have the phone resting in your lap. I have in the work van, I have or had one of those things that sticks to the windshield to hold the phone for navigation, and it literally broke while driving. So I had to get the directions of where I'm going. I had to stick the phone in the cup holder and then pick it up to see where I'm turning. I was kind of wondering, well, what do I do if I get pulled over? Do I just show them, look, damn thing broke? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. This is the same guy who, when the bill passed, but before it took effect, said that it was already saving lives. And he's citing statistics saying that from 2016 to 2019, fatalities have gone down 4.5%. And then he said, but if you count in population growth and traffic, fatalities are down 12%. Well, first of all, last year people drove less than they ever have before, and fatalities are up more than 12%. I can tell you that much, especially in Southeast Georgia. But he's from Cobb, so I'm sure he doesn't care about us down here. But he said this will make it more enforceable, and that because it's the recognition of the hands-free law is 98% to 99%. I don't know anyone who thinks a $50 ticket and 1 point on their license. I mean, I see people all the freaking time. And cops will tell you that this is more dangerous as it is, because when you can't hold your phone, people are looking down their crotch.
Right.
As opposed to holding it up in front of the steering wheel. And I'm not saying either or right. I'm not condoning either. But this is more dangerous.
Well, here's the thing about fatalities. I was talking to a fire chief one day, and he works in Smyrna area, right around where the Brave Stadium is. And I asked him about working fatalities, because we actually don't have a lot, because traffic is so bad in the area that you can't go fast enough to kill anybody. It's mostly fender benders. So when we look at 2020, say fatalities are up, well, that's because people could drive faster.
Yeah.
So to attribute that to, I mean, fatalities going down and say, well, that's because of the hands-free law. No. That's a idiotic way, a childish way of looking at things, that this is the only factor. It's either he's stupid or he thinks we're stupid.
When was the last time you got a traffic ticket at the municipal level? Like where you had to go to court, like municipal court?
Oh, it's been a while.
Not since this.
No.
So I used to sit in municipal court in Glenville when Judge Joe McGovern was on the bench. And I can tell you, first of all, a lot of people didn't know, even as recently as 2020, didn't know that you could come with a receipt that you bought a hands-free device and get the ticket thrown out. A lot of people didn't know that. They definitely enforced the difference but they definitely distinguished between the two types of offenses, whether it was like on the phone to your ear versus phone in your hand looking down at the screen. And, you know, you still have prosecutorial discretion. So the whole thing just needs to go. But if you're not going to repeal it, which they're obviously not, let's just be honest about what the point of this is and assess the fine on the first go around and don't put any points on the license, and people will pay the dang ticket online and not come to court and just move on with their lives. Like, if you're going to do this tiered system of first offense, second, third offense, blah, 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 just make the first one a fine only thing where you pay the ticket and you move on.
It's a couple things. It's a solution looking for a problem. It hasn't fixed anything. The biggest thing that I see with people texting and driving is sitting at a damn red light and I'm behind them.
And they don't go.
Yeah. Move your ass. And you can always tell when an old person is texting while they're driving because they have their reading glasses on. I say that as I'm sitting here with my reading glasses on. But to say, oh, we're saving lives, you D-bag. No, you're not. Don't dislocate your shoulder trying to pat yourself on the back on this one. Of all the things that they need to address up there, this is what he's worried about. Bringing a receipt into court, not paying a fine.
He also lied.
No.
Allegedly. Well, when it passed, they added this loophole in because there were a lot of lawmakers who were like, they weren't on board, and this is what made them, or hold on. They said this was the reason they were able to, get on board with it because it gave people a warning and all this crap. I think it was just an excuse and they felt like they couldn't vote against it. And when this was added, but so he pushed this 3 years ago, knowing he was going to come back, and take back the offer because he did it in the first time to get lawmakers to sign on to it. It was a concession he made. But, of course, this is backed by the Georgia Chiefs of Police Association, and they've been wrong before. So,
There's nothing that they love more than more laws.
Well, it gives them an opportunity to pull people over. I mean, that's what we've talked about the whole time. Every time we've talked about this show is we've talked about how this just it puts the police in their interaction with the public so much more than it would if this law was not there. And distracted driving, I don't care what anyone says. Kids are distracting. Dogs in the car are distracting. Things on the side of the road are distracting. Like, either someone is a good, assertive driver or they're not.
Look, you can still drive with your knees and eat soup with a fork. You can still put your makeup on. You can put your fake eyelashes in. This is not new. It's the old story of when it was either Mercedes or BMW was coming into the American market. They said you need cup holders in the car. They're like, why? You're driving. When you're driving, you're driving. That's what you do. You're not drinking. You're not eating. You're driving. And they're like, no. If you want to sell cars in the United States, you need to put cup holders in. Yeah. But you're right. You're either paying attention or you're not. You could be fiddling with the radio. Hell, the display in my truck has so many options, the damn thing, that you can get in a wreck. Just play. Allstate did a commercial about it. You know, the Mayhem or whatever had his face on there. Go ahead, touch me again, touch me. Yeah, if you're just trying to scroll, if you're trying to find a damn radio station, you know, I've got 500 radio stations with if you're scrolling through that, you're distracted driving.
Yeah, it's just stupid.
It is stupid, and look, it's you're right. It's for the Sheriff's Association or the Police Chiefs Association. It's an excuse if you don't even need to. All you have to do is say it looks like he was texting. What was your reason for initial contact? Well, it looked like he had a phone in his hand, so we stopped him to talk to him about that, and it turns out, you know, we smelled something funny in the car, so we initiated a search.
Cool.
Yeah. What else is new, huh? So there's a Georgia bill to require students to play sports on teams associated with the gender they were assigned at birth by Philip Singleton.
We talked about him last week, right? Was it last week? The Second Amendment? So. Maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know. The Second Amendment, the bill.
Yeah, the protection bill that would would prohibit the federal government from enforcing laws in the state of Georgia. Yeah.
Correct. What do you think about this one? This one, I mean, this has obviously been in the news a ton. And Kelly Loeffler was pushing something like, she signed on to it, I think, in Congress, but it prevents biological males from playing in school sports with biological females and halts children of different sexes or gender identities from playing in the same leagues. However, before we do go on in the conversation, I do want to note that already under GHSA standards, which is who governs state sports or public school sports and some private schools, they let girls play on boys' teams if there are no girls' teams allowed or at that school. So, like, I could play football because there's not a girls' football team. Right.
I was about to say the same thing. Is they have girls that play, and this goes back to when I was in high school. It was very, very rare. But you would have a girl on the wrestling team, or you'd have a girl on the football team, or especially with baseball, because there's a concerted push right now and a belief that we will sooner rather than later see a woman as a pitcher, or that they think it'll be a pitcher first in Major League Baseball. That girls are playing little league with boys that they don't necessarily swap off to softball if they're talented at baseball. But if you're talking about the principle of men going into women's sports and beating up on women, well, absolutely. This has been in the news because of the Olympic Commission, and Olympics are coming up. That you don't take a dude and take him into women's weightlifting. Okay, but this is... I know this is high school, but I'm talking about the principle.
Well, sure. But here's my thing. The underlying precedent here is if you're going to send your kids to public school, you got to play by the public school rules. And if you live in a public school system where they allow this, then either homeschool your kids or send them to a private school that has the values you want. I'm not saying I support this by any means, because I am obviously of the belief that, like, physically, women are often, very often, most usually, a weaker, more delicate gender. That's just a reality. Like, I played on a co-ed tennis team, and, like, you hated when I was growing up, you would hate when the guys were serving to you because they are stronger.
Yeah, and that's something in mixed doubles. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, I also don't want to go square up against some, padded up football players to tackle me.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Totally going to mess up my hair. But
the helmet by itself would mess up your hair.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not going to waste these highlights under a helmet, first of all. But second, no, but for real, like, and I understand that people want the option. Like, people want the option for their daughters to play on these teams if they don't have a team and whatever. But I will say it also speaks into something we've talked a lot about on the show, which is, at what age can a child truly decide that they are not the gender they were born with? Because that has to play into this here.
Yeah. Obviously, I think true transgenderism is overwhelmingly male to female, overwhelmingly presents itself early in life. It is such a small, true transgenderism is such a small percentage of the population that it wouldn't even figure. But what we find in competitive sports, especially contact sports, is you see boys who went through puberty with testosterone. And look, men typically grow larger, grow taller, denser muscle mass, denser bone mass. And yeah, it's ridiculous to think that even look at MMA, even the best female MMA, is not going to go step into the ring with a man, even the same weight class.
Well,
that's just it's biology. Sorry, Jess.
No, I don't really know how to articulate what I want to say, so it's fine. But I think it creates or it presents a lot of problems when you consider what happens when you, let's say in Georgia where, let's say that this doesn't pass. And so in Georgia, we do allow boys or transgender children or however, whatever the PC term is, I honestly can't keep up. But boys are in soccer and what other kinds, I don't know, cheerleading. No, that's not a good one because that's not contact, but and
boys been in cheerleading for a long time.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a terrible example, but actually they're not as much in high school, which really more at college. But anyway, you do some regional or national tournament, and the kids in the other states did not opt in to compete against,
Right. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. But also, you start talking about basketball. If you just look at the WNBA, which are the best basketball players for the women, versus the NBA, and there's a huge chasm in physical ability. Hell, look at the scores. So that is there's a huge chasm at every level between males and females.
Yeah, I wouldn't want my daughter competing against someone who is not biologically a girl in this sense.
Of course not.
I don't think that...
Where it counts, we don't segregate the sexes. Debate, chess, quiz team, all that stuff that is intellectual... Women absolutely excel against men. There's no difference. But when you start talking about biology and standing up and be able to throw a punch, the difference between a 17-year-old male who stands 6'7" and can slam dunk in high school versus versus females that are 5'6", 5'8", it's I hate to use the word fair, but you try to keep literally a level playing field in sports. We all play by the same rules.
Well, what's the difference between you play by the same rules, but you play by a skill level with JV and varsity. When it's outside of school, you play by age group. You don't put 6-year-olds up against 15-year-olds. We've just grouped people because there's a number of reasons for that. And I don't think that, I think it would be disingenuous to imply or overtly say that the sexes were separated for sports to discriminate against anybody. And I'm sorry that there's some gray area. Here's the thing, because this is truly, at the end of the day, the bill is about, when parents classify or acknowledge that their child is transgender, or however you want to define that. But the issue is that we're not really ready for something like this as a state, just like we're not ready for them in our prisons or anything else. Is why when they go to jail, they're in isolation or solitary, which is not necessarily right. But we as a society, our laws in general do not accommodate this. And so it creates problems as it trickles down. And doing something like this is just going to create more of an issue, because it allows, you to sue in a civil case if there's damages because somebody, or there's harm because a school violated it, or how. But we're not ready for this. We haven't defined what this means under the law. There's not a whole lot of other laws about transgenders in Georgia, let alone minors. And I think this is the entire concept, the entire conversation is, I guess, a little premature. And while that might mean that some transgender students don't know where they fit in the athletic department, I guess, there's lots of reasons other kids and people in general in life find out they don't fit in somewhere. And it's just, sometimes that's just it. It's like, I'm sorry, we're just not there yet.
Nor should we be. True transgenders are sub 1% of the population. There are a lot of kids with mental issues that are put in this box because they go online and they find support groups online, quote unquote support groups, that convince them that the reason that they feel out of place, the reason that they don't feel like they fit in, the reason they don't get along with mom and dad is that they're trapped in another body, or trapped in the wrong body. It's a mental health issue. In fact, I even brought this up on one of the first shows that you and I did together, that it's a mental illness. It's the same thing as being bulimic. Is you believe you're fat. You're 80 pounds. No, I eat too much. Yeah, but you're 80 pounds. You're a rail. No, I'm fat. Well, I'm a girl. No, you're not. You got a twig and berries there, Hoss. You're not a girl. Yes, I am. I'm a girl. And now society's like, okay, well, apparently you're a girl. Let's bend all our rules because you think you're a girl, instead of saying, well, let's get you some help. So a lot of these kids would, in any other time in history, would just be gay. I say just be gay. Would end up gay. It's like, I don't fit in. I'm attracted to the same sex, and they would have their own struggle. And I'm not making light of that. Certainly not making light of that. But to rob girls of the opportunity to compete on their own level so that we can make everybody accommodate to what is sub 1% of the population is absurd. The same thing with having to create non-gendered bathrooms because of sub 1% of the world.
Well, I know we're at risk of running long here, but I don't have a closing thought, so I'm just going to push on this. But, it's interesting to me that with this, and we've done it before. What was it? The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, like RFRA a couple years ago. It was the argument by Democrats, liberals, people who are more open-minded, I suppose, about these types of issues. It is economic and the economic impacts on the state. And that's the argument here again. Georgia Equality and Athlete Ally, which is a nonprofit, they said that it would this bill would conflict with athlete rules for the NCAA and could jeopardize Georgia's chances for hosting future college sports event and the FIFA World Cup in 2026. And it's interesting that they take the approach that there's an economic impact to this when one, and I'm getting off a little bit in the weeds, but by and large, they're the ones lobbying for our states to be closed, and they're so worried about the economy with regard to this one single bill, but the economies are shuttered all around the country. But whatever, no need to be consistent.
When it's something they don't like, all of a sudden they're fiscal
Yeah.
conservatives.
Right.
And when it's something they don't like, they say, well, you can't pass that bill. Yeah, the film industry will leave. And we're so worried about the economy, and we can't do this because the NCAA will, you know what? I'm fine with losing a lot of that stuff. And I really don't care about having the World Cup here, to be honest with you. But all of a sudden they are fiscal hawks. We can't do this because it costs us money. And then the same people in the same breath will go, well, we need to go ahead and give everybody a check.
Yeah.
So speaking of, Jessica, speaking of closing thoughts, as you mentioned before, not of transgenders, what are your closing thoughts?
That's really it. I wish that, all of our conversations are, well, what does so-and-so think of this? And how will this impact this group? And the answer is, legislation should do no harm. Not a single person should be negatively impacted. Not a single one, or disadvantaged. And if that can't be achieved, then leave it alone. And Lord have mercy, there'd be a ton fewer bills.
But what would they do for 40 days?
I don't give a Go home.
My only closing thought is, if you like what you heard, please like and share us on those awful social media sites. If you don't like what you heard, subject your friends to it. Have them download it and listen, and so you don't suffer alone. So, for Jessica Szilagyi, for Eric Cumby, our editor, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.